48-hour art check, round 92. I forgot to pull up the chat.
48-hour art check.
All right, here we are.
Yes.
We have Scott back with us.
How's it going?
Yeah, how you doing, man?
Not too bad.
Good.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Except for we did Artcasters last year.
We did. Yeah, last week we did it twice. We had you on the Monday and then on the Wednesday, right? Or were you not? Were you not on last week's Monday?
I was not.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't it? I think it was New Year's Eve or what?
We didn't. Yeah, you're right. We didn't do one on Monday. So yeah, it has been. It's been since before we took a break.
Yeah, it's been too long. Too long, you guys.
Yeah.
No breaks. No breaks allowed. Actually, speaking of no breaks, Cory, dude, you're super sick.
I'm coming off of it. I sound way worse than I am. But yeah, today was the first day of the semester, and like you can't miss the first day of the semester because it like sets the tone and everything. And so like last night I had to sleep upright on the couch because I couldn't lay down or anything, and I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. So this morning I was all sneaky, and I have this like thermos that keeps stuff really hot. So I like brought hot water, and I got a packet of Theraflu, and I was gonna down it right before class, and I got it out of my bag, and I looked at it, and I had grabbed a nighttime Theraflu.
Oh no!
And I was oh no way. So I had to do 3 hours of lecture without anything because my plan didn't work and I didn't have a backup plan. But it was still okay. I don't know if I'm usually fairly terrifying on the first day of school. I don't know if my tone of voice is worse and just enhances that or what right now. But
no, you just sound like a laid back DJ. Like
right.
So today's like where you got to do the really in-depth interviewee type stuff.
Yeah,
tell me about.
So tell me about your mother and your relationship with your dad. That's
all right.
Let's jump in.
Should we dive into it?
Yeah, Scott, why don't you start? What have you gotten done in the last 48 hours?
Okay, so last 48 hours. So I know one time before I did sort of a backdrop back here.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out a way to do a studio up here, like make it look like the underground lair. So I have my computer there. I wasn't really happy with that background. It was like on butcher paper, colored butcher paper, and I photographed some images of the other underground lair and pasted them on, and it just wasn't working. So I went and got some material and some craft foam, and I've been building a better background. So hopefully it'll work. So I've been doing that. Also, I had to kind of repair this desk back here. It had fallen down and broken one of the monitors, so I had to get a new monitor. So doing some of that kind of stuff. Yeah. I built some risers for my monitor. So just basically a bunch of stuff up here, framed some pictures. I did some videos. I did a 100 days kind of wrap up video that I uploaded. And then I did another one that'll go up maybe Wednesday or so, another like a Mad Genius Hall of Fame video. Okay. Proposals for freelance jobs, which I got, which was good. Let's see. I did, I don't know if you're showing the stuff, but that Get Your Geek On thing.
Yeah.
So I did these a while back. I know I'm probably going over, huh?
No, you're fine.
Okay. But so I did these for Phoenix Comic Con, but they're exclusive. So because I was just doing exclusive prints, I wanted to get more use out of them. So I had always had the intention to do like a variant that I would sell on my website. So I got approached to do, and we're still hammering out the details with this game show that hopefully will be on my channel.
Nice.
And it works with an app, this company that created this app. So hopefully people at home can play along. But I thought, well, I could use that artwork and use that sort of as the theme around it. And that would be the name of the show, is Get Your Geek On and everything. So I just kind of did some tweaks. So now I've got a print that maybe I can sell on my store or give away as prizes or something, assuming that happens. So I worked on doing that. I worked on, you can see that logo right there, or that font, that Fatal Blow font. I just finished that. That's for the sort of the deluxe version of what sort of the Comic Maker starter kit is. I'm
Nice.
going to do it like a paid version that's going to be like twice as big, and that's one of the fonts that's going to be included in that. So did that, and then just right now I'm just working on my concepts for the 100 Days of Making Comics anthology. So that's what I've been working on.
Cool.
That's crazy. It's quite a productive time, man.
Yeah.
So how about you, Josh? What'd you get done?
All right. I've actually feel pretty good. I finished the tight pencils a lot quicker than I thought I would. I think because there's so many repetitive panels on this page. So I'm already doing inks on those. So I inked the first panel of that. And then I finished day 6 and 7 of the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge to work on the anthology stuff. And I so far have 2 pages thumbnailed, and then I have to do my 100 days today because like I'm not including the comic time I do on my regular comic for my 100 days. So I need to put in my 30 minutes after this is done and do the thumbnails for the next page. So that's pretty much what I got.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then I oops, wrong button. There we go. I have failed in what I set out to do. So I have these characters designed and their little crest that's going to end up in that page for the comic, and this took me way longer than I thought. But I thought it was kind of a cool backstory. I've been trying to go like to as original the source as I can get, and so like the Dragor is it's a Viking zombie, and so they used to be like they would take out fishermen, and they're able to increase their size. They're just huge zombies, and they would be created if they weren't buried in a prone position, or if an animal jumped over their grave, or if they were unhappy in their death. And so if they died ignominiously, then they'd like come back to revenge. And so that's my harpooner, is my Dragor, and then the Lilitu is actually the original vampire, is based off of the Lilith myth. Lilith was supposed to be the demon that Adam was originally married to before Eve was created from his rib, and she kind of went off and went a little nuts. And anyway, the myth splits where she was supposed to be able to take the form of a screech owl, but she also had like succubus powers to where she would lie with men in their sleep and cause them to defile themselves in their sleep. But also she was a demon that could transform into a giant butterfly. And so I've kind of combined all of those things, and of course, because she's the original like vampiric myth, she's got the blood sucking and all of that, and that's where kind of that all kind of started, and then it kind of evolved from there. A lot of interesting things about vampires that I didn't know, and then I've got some Brunies and Silkies as the carpenters, coopers, and blacksmiths, and those are like Celtic kind of hearth creatures that would kind of fix things and repair things and punish servants that were lazy and stuff. And there's some interesting things with that. But like the guys, the Brunies are like super hairy, and the Silkies are like really hot women dressed in silk dresses, and they would like torture people. And they actually are where the Bogarts came from. And so if you treat them well and offer them hearth sacrifices of pudding and cake, then they'll like fix stuff in your house. But if you treat them poorly, then they turn into Bogarts and they torture you. And then the last one is I have dwarves. Everybody knows what a dwarf is, and Maenads. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's Dionysus. Is a Greek god who would kind of have these rave parties, and like a bunch of the virgins in whatever village would go crazy and would turn into Maenads, and they would dress in deerskin, and they would tear people limb from limb. They would be given like exceptional strength, like superhuman strength, and they'd just go on this like murderous rampage during the kind of drunken orgy parties that they would have, and they would just tear men apart with their bare hands. And so the dwarves and the mayonnaise are my my Marine Guard for this ship. So there's like a lot of, I don't know, not as much drawing as I would have liked to have gotten done, but I'm liking kind of the characters that I picked for the roles. I did more research and it still held true of what I was looking for. So
all of those sound so fascinating too, man. For anybody who's fascinated by mythology, it's a fun one to look into, like the origin of the Christmas tree and how it kind of ties into the Dionysus festival.
Right.
There's a lot of weird stuff built into like our weekdays. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. So anyway, so I didn't get done as much as I wanted to, but I just had, and I guess I could talk about that during challenges, but it's just like, it's hard to draw. Like if it was inking, I probably could have done a lot more, but like, because it was like character design and it took like a lot of thinking, and I was just like super foggy. So it just took way longer than it should have.
Yeah, I can relate to that. All right, let's get into challenges. Why don't you start it off, Corey, just to tie it into what you're already saying, you know?
Yeah, so I was sick. That was the big challenge. I last, I don't know, Thursday or whatever, I stayed up all night with my baby who had a cold, and not surprisingly, he gave me the cold, and so I've just had a cold all weekend, and I think I'm on the tail end of it, but it's just like, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad cold. So I had a flu a little while ago, and now I get the cold. So hopefully I've like knocked everything out, and I'm immune to the rest of whatever's going to happen this season. That's kind of my hope. But yeah, so that was, I don't know, just like tired, foggy brain, basically, is what's going on.
I had a reminder of what you're going through when today at work, like somebody who just had a baby, he's like a week in. I saw him in the lunchroom, and he just had like the look of like death that you have when you are at work and you've got a newborn at home.
Yeah.
I was like, "How are you sleeping?" He's like, "I haven't."
Yeah, you just don't. At least for the first month or so.
Oh man.
But yeah.
All right. So Scott, what about you? What were your challenges?
Just mostly like just unexpected things that take up a lot of time that I, rather not deal with. Like right now, I'm dealing with this thing with the Arizona Department of Revenue for my TPT tax, so I can, do shows and stuff like that. There's like an annual fee I have to pay, and the only way you can pay it is through their website. But the website will not let me pay, and I've been dealing with this for the past couple of years. I mean, every year it comes around, and I like the past last week I spent Thursday and Friday like an hour on hold on Thursday, and then an hour talking with them, probably, or maybe like half an hour, and then got nowhere. Had to call. They told me something was going to happen, or to do something else, print out a form, and I looked at the form, and it was like, this has nothing to do with what my problem is. So then I called back Friday, hour, on hold, then talked to them, and it sounded like it's finally going to get settled. And they said, well, just on Monday when you go back in, the system should allow you to pay. And I go on there today, and it says, I looked under the status, and it says my account is suspended. So I don't know. I mean, I just want to pay these people, and they make it impossible. I don't know. They can build like bridges and roads and all this stuff, but they can't make a website that functions like it's not from 2000. I mean, from like 1996 or something. So I don't know. I mean, it's so frustrating. And so when I found that today, I'm like, I'm just not calling today because I don't want to deal with this, but I got to deal with it eventually. And usually the way I work is I like to get the stuff out of the way that I don't want to do, because I used to be bad about that. Because usually when you procrastinate, you put those things off till later. Yeah. So I just want to get them done with. And it's just, I mean, and it's to the point where I'm almost like considering stopping to do like shows, because it's such a it's such a pain in the ass. But anyway, so stuff like that, and a little bit of software issues. Like I went to work on the font, and the font program I'm using called Font Self, and it's a like a plugin, or not a plugin, but extension to Illustrator. And I guess with some kind of Illustrator update, it was doing something with the font, so I had to download the new version, and then I had to find the key and all this other stuff, and then it wasn't uploading, and finally I got it to work, and I actually made the font. But just, little things like that, and it's not like, I mean, these things happen. It's just everyday stuff, but it would just be not, because you when you plan your day, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then you get these things that should theoretically only take like maybe a half hour, and it ends up taking hours and hours, and just ruins everything. So just little things like that,
Yeah.
So
that's frustrating.
Yeah.
So Josh, how about you? Challenges?
So I had a similar thing. I mean, it wasn't with a government thing, but I decided to like submit for a certain thing. I'm not going to talk about it publicly yet, but you guys are familiar with what it is. And one of the processes to submit like required filling out these forms. And I was like, okay, well, Saturday I'll spend like 20 minutes on it. 6 hours later.
Oh man.
It just took forever to format. And then when I formatted it, I reread like certain submission things, and it was like, oh, I didn't format it right. So that was surprising. And then oddly enough, like editing, I got really super into editing the intro for our podcast, and then just started noodling around on GarageBand and like enjoying the fact that I was relearning GarageBand because they had changed the platform. And so trying to kind of relearn like the stuff I knew like, almost 10 years ago now on GarageBand, and then realizing I did made me all excited because I was like, oh, I can make music and do all this stuff. And I'm like, I caught myself like making beats and stuff. And I'm like, do I want to be a DJ? Like, what am I doing? So a lot of my struggle this weekend was just like finding focus and like getting the art done and stuff. But I do feel like I overcame some of the challenges. Like for instance, I finally worked out for like the first time in almost a month now. That's how I am as a person. It's like if I take a break from something, it can be like a month. And so I'm definitely going to try to keep on that because, we got to keep our health as artists and stuff. So that for me felt like a huge hurdle because I'm like, okay, now that window's open, so tonight I'll do that and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think paperwork and submitting forms is like the worst. And then, I don't know, to like those fun rabbit holes of like discovering or rediscovering stuff that you like doing that is a distraction. Those are always super hard. But
yeah, especially if it's fun.
Right. So we've got a pretty lively chat here. We've got somebody new, Sticky Art channel, and I'll have to go check out.
That's familiar. Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll have to go. I have to go check out his channel. He just subbed, and anyway, so that's awesome. And then we've got Tim, and the Eye of the Storm. So it'll be fun to have everybody in there. Yeah. So, how about plans? What are your plans for the next couple of days, Scott?
Well, I was, one of the things I was trying to do this week, because I knew my freelance, I was waiting on some stuff, confirmation on some freelance projects, and I got that. So I was trying to get as much done as I could before I have to start tackling all my freelance stuff. So, but now that I've got that, I really need to, concentrate on that and get those at least at a certain point, so then I can start working on my other stuff. But while I'm doing that, I'll work a little bit on the anthology and YouTube videos and things. But I gotta pay the bills. So that's what I'm gonna be working. I just wish I could have got more work done before tomorrow. So, but
yeah. How about you, Josh? What are your plans?
So tonight I plan on doing day 8 of the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge. and doing the thumbnails for the next page. So that'll put me in a good position because tomorrow I'll have the thumbnails for the 4th page, and then I'll be able to kind of actually get into the dirt of making the thing. And then so assuming like I don't hit like a block or anything, which I rarely do, like on at that stage anymore, I should be right on track. And then obviously I want to do ink at least the next 2 panels of my page for quarterly stories. And then I actually have to do some revisions too for a freelance client. And very similar to Scott, I've been trying to kind of get everything out of the way other than that thing. And it was a client who didn't get back to me for a while. So when they finally got back to me, I was like, oh, great, I got to do this thing. So that's something I'm going to need to wrap up. I'll probably, I don't know when I'll work on it. So we'll see. But yeah, those are my plans.
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna sleep, and and I'm also gonna see if I can get the. I'm gonna get. I will get all of the little crests done for this page. So I've got 3 to 5 more of those, depending on how I want to write that page, and then I would also like to get like the rough, slightly tighter pencils on the ship and get the layout of that ribbon. So I'm hoping to get like the rough on that page like totally done, so that I can move on to pencils for that page. That's kind of my plan. I think it's a little bit more realistic because I was planning on knocking a few of those out, but yeah, I think it's realistic to to say I can get the roughs done for that page.
Oh, Cory, make sure you take NyQuil, not DayQuil.
Yeah, right. Oh,
all right.
Man.
Should we get into the topic?
Yeah.
In the chat said finding balance is tough. Also, I can relate to trying to learn to edit and make art from my videos. It takes forever. So yeah, we all relate to that.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you that are new, this is the 48-hour art check, and typically what we do is we spend the first part of the show checking in with each other on our progress that we've made in the last 48 hours, the challenges that we had in the last 48 hours, and our plans for the next 48 hours. And what we're going to do now is we jump into a topic. And do you want to jump in on today's topic, Josh? Do you want to introduce it?
Sure. So the topic is curation. And so why this kind of came up was we were all kind of talking before recording about how there used to be a lot more gatekeeping in comics and in art in general, and kind of with the immersion of our society with the internet, there's less and less curation. So there are pluses and minuses that come from that. And so we were going to kind of talk about that, like the sort of death of gatekeeping and the death of curation, and then whether those things should die, whether they have value, whether they have place, and kind of get into that. So and then of course we're going to try to stick to a tight 15 because we don't want Cory to get more sick. So
I would actually argue that gatekeeping is returned, but it's returned without curation. And so if you look at the history of it, you used to have gatekeepers, and it would whoever had an audience or had power, and so those would be people who were on TV. They'd be people who controlled the newspapers or whatever. And then you had like kind of in between the internet coming out and what people started to call Web 2.0, things were still very curated because it was still very difficult to create something. So something like Threadless it was technically Web 2.0 because it was user generated, but it was very curated situation. And then I feel like there was kind of this free for all where social media came out, and all of the social media channels had like a natural timeline that was it wasn't algorithmically based. They weren't punishing people who didn't pay for ads. They weren't trying to push the popular people who were already popular. So there was this period of time where I think both gatekeeping and curation was kind of dead. But I feel like now gatekeeping has returned in that we have algorithmic timelines on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And like, I can't reach the people who have decided to follow me on these things without the algorithm gatekeeper. But I believe that gatekeeper has showed up without any curation. And so if you look at people, if you go through art, whether it be illustration or animation or writing or whatever, there's still just a mass of it out there. And it's just a giant glut with nothing necessarily rising to the top based on quality, but things rising to the top based on influence and what you can trade in eyeballs. And so it's kind of a different game nowadays. And I don't miss the gatekeepers. I hate gatekeepers, but I do miss the curation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Scott, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, not how it relates as far as like social media, but I was thinking more like the pros and cons to it, like especially like at comic conventions.
Yeah.
Like and I'm not totally one way or the other, but I think in certain cases there should be both. Like I think there should be comic conventions where maybe, and I don't know if this is necessarily a curation things, but something where they're more prone to have people who are creating original ideas instead of just fan art things. Not that I still think there's a need for that, the fan art, but I think in certain cases there should be, this person is, creating original ideas and they, or their own comics and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's certain cases like that. The other, but there's the other side of the coin. And I think we touched on this on the Artcasters the other day, but like with the 100 Days of Making Comics anthology that we're all working on right now, there isn't a curation as far as the quality or how long you've been doing it for or anything like that, which I like. That's what I like about that particular challenge, because it gives people that are maybe just starting off the opportunity to be right there, work right there along with some people that are maybe working professionals who've done it for a while, and maybe learn from them or just be right up there with them. And I like that a lot. But there is some curation to that. And the only curation to that is that you can actually produce work. And I think that's important too. So I don't think it always has to be, your skill level or whatever. Although there's certain places that, I remember like I used to do, this is way before cosplayer and everything like that. But my parents would make these costumes and we'd go to costume contests, and it wasn't always, they weren't always judged on like quality. Like if you had like a really cute kid or with a cute little outfit, and that could be something they would have just bought at the store, but this cute little kid, and then you're next to maybe something that's like a monster costume. But there's a lot that goes into it. That cute little kid could win easily just because of what, that they bought a store at a costume and they happen to look cute, and that certain things like that. So certain things I think should be judged by professionals. Also like there's all those situations where sometimes it's a popularity contest as opposed to merit based. That I don't really like at all. Like a lot of the, some of these like either like not game shows, but like reality shows or whatever. It's not always based on the talent or whatever. Sometimes it's more of a popularity contest, which I'm not real crazy about.
Yeah.
So I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I think in certain situations, I like the fact that some professional, somebody that is experienced and that kind of knows whatever industry it is sort of voting on that. But like, it's almost like if you look at like the the Kids' Choice Awards versus say maybe something like the Oscar.
Yeah.
Like I remember I went to, it was the Nickelodeon Awards. I went there with a friend of mine who was up for one of the awards for a voiceover thing. And you know, he didn't win, but the one that won was it just so happened to be a show that was on Nickelodeon as opposed to another network. Different things like that. So, you know, and that those type of things are total popularity things, but you know, they're for kids, so I can sort of understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I think there should be, you know, I think there should kind of be both, you know, and I can see the pluses and minuses of both, but I don't know. I mean,
yeah, like for me, I resonate a lot with what you were talking about, Cory, because I feel like when I got in on Threadless, it was like at this sweet spot where the gatekeeping and the curation and then crowdsourcing, there was like a pure moment. It's weird, but it was like maybe a couple of years where literally everybody voting on it was a member of that community. Yeah. And were the people who bought those shirts. And then, you know, of course you get friends and stuff to vote, but nobody was gaming the system heavily. There was a bit of a game to it, but it wasn't like heavily gamed, and it wasn't easy to manipulate. So what got printed was always stuff that actually got bought. And I think that's why during those years they had such a surge in sales, and why those shirts that were printed back then are like still the best sellers today on that site. What's interesting is this thing happened and I witnessed it, and it was with the inception of like Facebook and other social media platforms where you could like mobilize and you could really game Threadless by manipulating through those social media platforms. That kind of seemed to me to kind of get involved in Threadless, and then you started having it be more of a popularity contest rather than a quality contest. And rather than being a bunch of geeks who liked t-shirts saying which one they wanted to buy and then proceeding to buy it, instead it became a bunch of outsiders from outside of the community coming in and saying, I'll buy that, and then not buying it. Right. You know what I mean? But it got printed. And so I think that's part of why that model is kind of the more successful stuff on it now has switched to like print on demand. And I think that happened. I think that happens everywhere. I think that's happened on YouTube. I think there are a lot of channels that kind of grew from nothing and exploded and got like tons of subscribers and like got it based on their content. Yeah. And I think now a lot of the YouTube game is similar. I do think like producing quality never dies, but it's just like I do personally kind of think there's some value to, you know, a game where where content is valued and where quality is valued. So what I'd say for like gatekeeping is gatekeeping is annoying, but when gatekeeping is tied to curation, there's a benefit. And I think the best example of that is like the media, where you have, you know, now we have this situation with news where people are unable to tell what is actual news, like what's true, what's factual, and what's not. And the line is blurring so much that like some legitimate news organizations that had a lot of funding for like really intensive research and checks and balances on what they were going to report before reporting it, they're getting kind of squished out of the industry for clickbait. And clickbait has kind of become the news. And then the news organizations that were decent news organizations have had to kind of follow suit to keep the advertisers. And not that it's ever been pure, but it's becoming less and less easy to tell what's real and what's not. And I think a lot of that has to do with curation. Whereas now the kind of modern form of curation is like what you have with like something like Huffington Post, where it's an algorithm that's kind of reposting what's trending. Right. And so and I'd say the same with criticism. Criticism is facing that a lot too, especially art criticism, where it's like, you know, you used to have critics who would kind of earn their right to like write criticism of comics or of other things, And whether you liked critics at that time or not, most of them were like extremely aware of the industry they were criticizing and extremely aware of like the art of storytelling and the way that comics are crafted or that books are crafted or that movies are made. Whereas now that the curation's gone, it's like you kind of have a situation where anybody can be a critic and be taken seriously if they get enough of a reaction, if they get a click. And so I do feel like that's very similar with art too, where it's like, you know, if you can get enough clicks, if you can get enough likes, you know, you can be an artist and stuff. I don't think it's that different than how it's been. I just think it's so much easier for things to kind of fall out without it. So it's like, it's this weird situation where the plus side is we're in a situation where like a lot of eyeballs can get to anybody, and you don't have to be like a guy on Marvel Comics. You don't have to have won some award. You know, the laurels don't matter. So we're in a situation where content can be put out there freely, and you don't have to like be an official critic to say whether you liked a movie or not, or to even have an effect on the company producing those films. So that's a benefit, but that can also be a negative. It's a weird thing, and I'm not sure where I rest on it, but I do think it's somewhere with what, you know, Scott and Cory, like both of you were saying, which is that, you know, I do think there's some value, and I do think it seems like there's a need right now for some kind of curation to come back, and not for that to be a curation of, you know, from people just kind of trying to kind of protect their throne, but like a curation that's more just based on like, this is quality, we should pay attention to it, you know?
And you know, part of the problem is that the motivations to do that are they've moved. And so if you look at, like, I went to a conference 4 years ago that was for newspapers, right? Because I teach communication in college. And so I was at this newspaper conference, and the entire conference, they were talking about how native advertising is going to save the industry. And native advertising is a really interesting thing, because what it is they are advertisements that are intentionally trying to look exactly like whatever they're being delivered in. And so, for example, in a newspaper, a native ad would look exactly like an article. And it would be very difficult for most people to tell that Ford, you know, paid for that article to be written, because it's written by journalists. And it might say somewhere that it was sponsored by Ford, but it is written in a journalistic style, and it belongs, it's not necessarily demarcated as an ad. And then in addition to that, you have, and that's what everybody, I mean, because there used to be a very clear separation between the ad department and the sales department and the journalism department. But what happened is everything started dying. And so this all started kind of in the late 80s, early 90s when cable came out, and that fractured kind of the television news industry into a bunch of different things. And then you had 24-hour news cycles rather than just the news at 6 and the news at 11 and the news at 5 in the morning. And I think part of the main problem, whether you're talking about art or whether you're talking about social media or whether you're talking about news or journalism or whatever, is everyone right now in any game is looking for short-term results. And the problem with short-term results is you end up, it's the snake eating its own tail, right? What's happening is you have journalists that are doing things to survive that is really bad journalism. It's just poor quality journalism. You have artists that are doing things for the quick views and the quick buck that is really bad practices from a creative standpoint. So, for example, fan art's fine and it's fun, and I've done my fair share of fan art. It's entertaining, right? But the real long-term artistic goal in an illustration and storytelling standpoint is to own the intellectual property yourself. And if I own the intellectual property, then that IP takes off, you know, then that's a sustainable, renewable source of income, right? That I can never get from fan art because I don't own the IP, right? But the downside to doing good journalism, producing good content on YouTube or social media, or you know, doing my own intellectual property, is that it's a long game with very few short-term results.
Yeah.
You know, and so the challenge in any industry that we have today with, you know, curation of quality content is that it flies in the face of this, this instant gratification immediacy, that the culture's demanding right now. And businesses and artists and writers, and people on YouTube are living and dying, based on whether they are going for short-term or long-term results. And the sad thing about going for the short term is that it works, but it's short term.
Yeah, agreed. And you know, I guess we're kind of close to I think tying this up, but to me, one of the concerns is like, you know, how are you going to have a Seymour Hersh in this day and age, like exposing, you know, like the horrors of what really going on in Vietnam, because that kind of journalism, if you look back into it, required a lot of money invested into it, where a journalist would find leads and then they'd chase those leads, and sometimes those leads would go cold. And, you know, the news organizations at the time would bank on those things, understanding that one of those leads would lead to truth, and that, like, you know, by exposing truth, like, you're going to get you know, important journalism, and you're going to kind of inform the public to an extent that you can't with like short-term, you know, news bites. But now what's disturbing that you were mentioning with journalism is now we're kind of in a situation where it's the doctor selling you cigarettes, you know, it's put on a lab coat. They won't know any different. And it's kind of that guised as like newspaper articles. And similarly, I'd say we're in a very similar situation with art, where I think a lot of the time it's kind of an emperor's new clothes situation. And by the time people realize the emperor has no clothes, you know, the person who posted that got 1 million likes. And, you know, meanwhile, there's people out there to like really making very important art that's just going unnoticed because everybody's distracted by the new thing. That being said, Wesley in the chat said, I think there can be lots of skill in a piece of art, but if it's not appealing to the eye, it's definitely not going to be as popular. And I agree with that too. You know, I used to say that to my students, like that. I could go into a gallery and see a perfect, beautiful rendering of a duck, and I'm not going to walk out of that gallery knowing that artist's name. But if I go into a gallery and I see like Marcel Duchamp's toilet, you know, signed R. Mutt, I'm going to find out who did that. It's weird. It's got a concept to it. And to me, I'll take the concept over like the quality any day. So I kind of agree with that idea. The Sticky Art channel said, I've put hours into a video that got 100 views and others that take 30 minutes that gets thousands of views. The YouTube algorithms broke. And I think we could all relate to that. I think most of us, our most popular videos probably aren't necessarily our favorite videos. And probably with our art too, right? Like I think, you know, it can be very frustrating as an artist to do like a sketch of Batman and post that online, and that gets way more response than like the thing you've spent like 10 years on, you know?
Yeah, it's also, I mean, it's also sometimes just what people like. I mean, exactly. It's, and I guess that's sort of what the algorithm is based on, but I was listening to a podcast, and they were interviewing a lettering artist who said, you know, she did this really impressive, you know, fully produced video of her doing this lettering project and all the hours and the time lapse that went into it. And she said it did all right, but then one day she was just out at the beach and she wrote her name or something in the sand, and it got like three or four times as many likes. So, you know, who knows? I mean, it's just sometimes things that people react to aren't necessarily the things that take a long time to do. So, I mean, I kind of, I know that when I post things, like certain things, it's like, I'll put a lot of time in this mainly because I want something that looks nice, but it might not do very well. There's a lot of the videos that I do, like the one I was just working on, the Mad Genius Hall of Fame that I'm going to post. Those don't get anywhere near as much views as ones where I'm actually giving advice or whatever. Because I think part of it's like kind of not that my audience is just like, what's in it for me, but people react more like, oh, I'm kind of, what can I get out of this,
Yeah.
And some people watch because they just like the drawing or whatever, and that's cool too, but the majority of people, and that's why a lot of, for me too, when I'm watching YouTube, there's certain people I follow, and I follow them because they produce cool artwork and I like what they have to say. But there's certain other things that I just like, oh, I need to know how to do this, or I need to know what that is.
An example would be, we were just talking about, like you and I were actually just talking about this. I didn't know how to change my car battery in the specific model of Honda that I have, because they have this weird thing on it. It's different than it used to be. And so I just looked up a YouTube tutorial. Did I subscribe to that guy? Did I go, okay, what other car prep? For all I know, that guy might be making custom cars that are amazing. And yet I guarantee I'm one of the reasons that guy's main video is just utilitarian.
Yeah.
It served a purpose for me. So I can see that too. I would say just kind of tying this all up, and then Cory, I think you have something to say too, but it seems like to me where we can go as artists who are kind of looking for that sweet spot where, curation and gatekeeping are kind of tied in together, and maybe the gatekeeping is a little lower, so it's a little freer for everybody to get through. I think if we're looking for that, generally what we should be doing is putting out good content, because then we can create that sweet spot. Because even if the algorithm just kind of lucks out on that thing, at least then you're locked into making something good, instead of a cigarette ad with a doctor coat on and just kind of wondering, am I scamming people right now? So yeah, that would be what I take away from it. Cory, you got something?
I think as always, I think balance is really important. And so, for example, with Scott's Mad Geniuses thing, that has the potential to be a series that in the long run, becomes an awesome book that gets kickstarted, or something, but in the short term might not have much. But then if you only play the long game, like one of my favorite podcasters is oh man, I'm sick and my brain's foggy. He does hand lettering, and Sean West, right? Sean McCabe. He famously touted the long game over and over and over again. And then in the last year or so, he's come out and said, to his detriment, he didn't focus on short term and had to let people in his company go, and went through, he's going through horrible things right now. And it's because he had a hyper focus on the long term without a balance. And I think if you only do short term, it's going to be empty calories, right? You're going to get that buzz from eating that sugar, and then you're going to crash. You're going to get those initial hits, but then nobody's going to know who you are, and no one's going to stick around. Or they're going to stick around, but you don't own any of the IP, and so it doesn't matter, right? But if you only do the long-term stuff, then you're never going to get that little boost, that little bump, that little whatever, and no one's going to know, and your long-term stuff won't get anything. And so the thing that I've seen, and it's kind of my game plan that works really well. You look at somebody like Bill Murray, or you look at somebody like Sean Gordon Murphy or whatever. And what they will do is they will do a book for them, and then they'll do a book for the masses. And so, like Sean Gordon Murphy, he's been on Ink Pulp Audio, which is Sean Crystal's interview kind of podcast thing, and he said that his plan is that he gains an audience by doing kind of the fan art type of stuff. And so he's done Batman White Knight, which is a phenomenal book. But then, before that, he did, Punk Rock Jesus, right? And so he'll gain an audience with, he'll build an audience with the stuff that everybody's used to, but then he retains his audience with the stuff that he's making for himself, or he owns the intellectual property. And so I think going back and forth and having kind of a balance is a good strategy, because it gives you the eyeballs that you need in the short term, but it gives you the longevity that you need to stick around in the long term.
Nice.
How much of that balance is a really hard thing to choose, but I mean, that's why I do the occasional fan art piece. That's why I do the occasional whatever, is because, it's fun. And somebody might look at that. Most people are going to go, cool, Princess Leia, that's great. And then they move on. But every so often they go, oh, wow, I like that guy's style. That Princess Leia is awesome. They came for the Princess Leia. They stick around for the weird intellectual stickers about nothing. And so, and you kind of hook people through some of that stuff, whereas otherwise you wouldn't.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
that's cool. So I think that the gist then of what we're saying is like, it's not bad to have hits. Just don't be that person. We all had that experience pre-MP3s where you buy an album because the single's great and the whole album is crap.
Yeah.
It's one good song. And that may like lead to like, doing bad Vegas shows where like a bunch of people show up and sing along to that one song.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be better to be the band that has, multiple hits, but also a bunch of beautiful content that everyone can connect to kind of bring them along on the whole journey. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Sweet.
All right. Well, thanks everybody in the chats. It's awesome. And we do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. California time. Scott joins us typically on Mondays where we go a little bit longer. We'd love to have you stick around. You're on my channel right now, so if you haven't already, hit that bell to get notified on when we go live. You can subscribe. And you can see my stuff at CoryKerr.com. This is also a podcast, and you can just search 48-Hour Art Check on anywhere that you get your podcasts. And we'd love positive reviews on that. If you want to check out Scott Serkland's work, go to Serkworks.com. He's got an awesome starter pack for comics. If you're looking to do comics and like save yourself some time and learn some things, you can sign up for his newsletter and get that starter pack for free. And as always, you can check out Joshua Kemble's stuff at quarterlystories.com. Quarterly Stories is a comic about faith and mental illness, and it's fantastic, and he's about to wrap volume 1 of that, and so you guys should check that out as well. And if you've got a moment, get on Tapas.io or download the Tapas app and search for Quarterly Stories, and you can subscribe there, and that's a free way that doesn't cost you any money that you can help him out, because those numbers are really beneficial. We will see you guys in a couple days. We are out.
Bye.